Team orders? I don't need no stinking team orders. I'm pitiful who follows team orders. I got #1 in my car and I'll be #1 in this race. I don't know why Vettel is American. That's my best German accent, actually. So, yeah, I think I need to work on it a bit. Rolled it. Hey, I'm Kev Kermis and welcome to Power Oversteer, the world most watched show on the elusive Kev channel. And yeah, I do apologise, this video is a bit later than a HRT finishing a race. Well, I just haven't had the space to actually record this properly for the past few days since the race has happened, and I've been a bit busy as well. And you might have seen my IndyCar one, which I just recorded in the other room. So yeah, I didn't really have the time or space basically. So yeah, but now I do, and this is the review of the Malaysian Grand Prix. As you can see, a quite controversial Malaysian Grand Prix. Not the most interesting race for me on track action or in strategy terms, but there was a big talking points in that race, and there are actually two major talking points. There's a bit of a team order kerfuffle and how racing is not fun for the drivers. They've been talking about the tyres quite a lot this weekend as well, or last weekend. So firstly, let's go into the race recap. So the race recap, and I don't know how to do this in less than 10 minutes, frankly. So much happened in this race. It wasn't actually the most entertaining race for overtaking wise. Mostly action happened off camera and down the order, but it was just a very interesting race. But the most action really happened in those first few. That's when we had the inter to dry switch, and so I've got the Spectator results because I've got my notes in front of me. So let's recap this race. And at the start we had Vettel from pole, another good getaway, holding on to the lead ahead of Alonso, with Massa, Webber and Hamilton behind. But between turns 1 and 2, Alonso got his braking a bit wrong for turn 2. He kind of outbraked himself a bit. The car kind of didn't like that, and he went into the back of Vettel and damaged his front wing. It was at that angle, that angle kind of. So he kind of struggled, it seemed, but he kind of held on to second incredibly until the end of the lap, holding off Webber, who had a look on the exit of turns 3, but Alonso held it on the outside of turn 4 and held him off for the rest of the lap amazingly. And while this was happening, Massa kind of got bulked by his teammate, it seemed, and so Hamilton got past him between turns 2 and 4, and by the second sector, Button had also made his way past Massa. But behind that you had Rosberg, Perez, Sutil and Hulkenberg rounding out the top 10, and at the end of the lap we had Vettel leading by almost 3.5 seconds from Webber and Alonso alongside each other across the line, and then Webber made it past. And when he kind of pulled out in front, the aero load from his, the vortices from his car kind of went on to added aero load to that front wing, and it kind of went kaboom, and it destroyed itself, and Alonso entered in the gravel in turn 1, and Ferrari kind of realised this about 5 seconds before, and that the ring was going to fall apart, and maybe an unwise call from Ferrari and Alonso as well. But on lap 2, after that, the Red Bull 1-2, and behind, Rosberg passed Massa into the second sector, so there was good fighting behind, and Button kind of went wide in the last and outbraked himself, and this kind of set up a run for Rosberg to make a way past Button. But it wasn't until turn 4 where Button just held on the inside, but then Rosberg had the inside for turn 5 and made his way past Button. And so on lap 4, this is when we're starting to think, you should maybe change tyres. But Nico Hulkenberg, he enjoyed these conditions. He made his way past Sutil in turn 4, and Raikkonen had a look on the outside of Ricciardo further down the order, Ricciardo into the top 10 for Toro Rosso. But in the end, he was actually, his teammate was holding off into turn 2. He took a look on the outside of Ricardo in turn 1, and then held the inside from his teammate in turn 2, and Raikkonen kind of went wide in turn 13, not the last time we would see that in the race, and Grosjean made his way through. And then on that 5, he had Hulkenberg around the outside of Perez for 7th in turn 1, but Perez going back on the inside into turn 2. It was great fighting between the two youngsters there, but Grosjean made it past Ricardo into turn 2 for 10th, and now he was into the points, and Grosjean fighting the Toro Rosso for points again, just like he was fighting Vern in Australia. But at the back we had both Caterhams, Pick, Van der Garde, we had Bianchi and Bottas, who tried to go round the outside, I think, of Van der Garde into turn 1 on the first lap, but that just resulted in ended up in last, and so he's making his way through the order. But on lap 6, Webber, he led because Vettel and Massa pitted at the end of that 5 for medium tyres. He led by 3.5 seconds from Hamilton, with Rosberg 2 seconds back on his teammate Button in an excellent 4th, 11.8 seconds off the lead, and Hulkenberg in 5th, 4 seconds behind Button. And Vettel, he came out in front of Perez, but he lost that ground in the wet first sector to Perez, to Sutil, to Grosjean as well, and then he overtook Grosjean in the second sector between turn 9 and 10. He got a great exit from turn 9 in that dry sector, and he almost got past Sutil, but it was a bit of a damp last corner still, and he stayed behind. But Sutil, Ricardo, Grosjean, De Resta, Maldonado, Van der Garde, Mauritius or Bianchi, they all pitted as well, and there's a slow stop for Sutil, and they're forcing the first signs of their problems they would have with their wheel nuts. The rear left, sorry, he kind of had a problem getting that on. But on that 7, Vettel made it past Perez, who was still out there in the McLaren in turn 11 up to 6th spot. But it was Webber leading Hamilton in Hamilton. Actually, they pitted at the end of that lap, and he went into the McLaren garage. He's just saying hi. He's just saying hi to the boys, but maybe should have waited until after the race, and that kind of cost him a bit of time as well. And Button, Hulkenberg, Gutierrez, who was doing well on the Sauber as well, John-Eric Verne and Raikkonen all pitted, but unfortunately for John-Eric Verne, he got released into Charles Pick's path as he was going into his pit stall, and he had to be rolled back to change the front ring, and Toro also got fined €10,000 for that after the race, and that kind of cost Pick as well, as he dropped to last. And so we had Massa, who was doing the fastest lap on the mediums with a 1:55, so it was definitely time to be on the dry tyres. And by that 9, almost everyone had pitted, as we had Rosberg pitting on the end of that 8, and the rest down in 17th, was actually doing fastest laps in the Force India with 1:48.7. But we had good fighting in the midfield as Webber led from Vettel at the front. We had Raikkonen in still fighting Ricardo into turn 9. We had Maldonado as well up to 12. He was doing quite well, and Van der Garde in 14th ahead of Sutil after his pit stop race. So yeah, Caterham really got that timing right. It was Bianchi in 17th behind De Resta, and you had Bottas, Chilton and Verne and Pick. So yeah, the two pit stop buddies there at the back. But soon Raikkonen, DRS, Ricardo down the back straight, and Hulkenberg, he was doing fastest laps in that Sauber, but he kind of burned his tyres a bit too much there, and the rest of DRS Van der Garde, and Bottas DRS Bianchi down the back straight as well. And by that time we had Webber, Gutierrez, Van der Garde and Verne. They were the only drivers on the hard tyres. Everyone else was on medium tyres. Webber was almost leading by 3 seconds at the front, but the front 4 would be closing up as Hamilton did fastest lap, and Button was in a solid 5th, just holding off Hulkenberg on lap 11 into turn 1, getting DRS Hulkenberg there, but just held him off, and then Hulkenberg's tyres started to soon go off, and by that 17, his tyres were off, and he was dropping back into the clutches of Massa behind. But stands at the quarter-way point when we saw Maldonado go a bit wide. He went off in turn 11, got his wheel on the curve there and went through the gravel, and damaged his front wing, so he went to the back of the field. But yeah, but around this time at the quarterway mark, we had Webber leading by Vettel by 2.2 seconds, Hamilton 1.1 further back, with Rosberg 3.2 behind him. We had Button 8 seconds back of Rosberg in 5th, 2.6 ahead of Hulk, and Massa, who was 2.8 behind Hulkenberg. Then you had Grosjean 2.5 behind Massa, then Perez 4.2 behind Grosjean, with Raikkonen about half a second behind the McLaren, and he was just stuck behind the McLaren. He looked like he had trouble getting the power down out of corners. Ricciardo 6 seconds off in 11th, then Di Resta and Sutil making their way through the field. Gutierrez, he went wide in turn 8, he was ahead of the Force Indians and then kind of let them through. Bottas behind them, and Van der Garde ahead of the newer teams, just ahead of Bianchi, with Verne 4 seconds back. Chilton was only 3 seconds back of Verne, and Pick was 4 seconds back of Chilton, with Maldonado over 20 seconds back after his pit stop. And Grosjean was doing the fastest lap around this time. Fastest laps all happening all over the field. But Raikkonen finally made his way past Perez down the front straight, so made it up to 9th place. Webber was doing fastest laps, then Rosberg as well. Hulkenberg, as I said, his tyres were done, and Bianchi pitted at the end of lap 17. Bit of a strange call there on his mediums, but soon followed, had Van der Garde pitting as well. And then on lap 19 we had Webber pitting for mediums, a super fast 2.3 second stop from Red Bull, and he came out in 5th behind Button. And then we had Massa and Grosjean pit the next lap, and they got out behind Sutil, and the rest was stuck in the pits with that wheel nut problem that Force India had, and he went out for a few laps again, but again he was called in a few laps later and retired. Same with Sutil after he made his pit stops on the next lap. He had problems with it, he went out for a few laps, and unfortunately he was wheeled in again just after his team mate. But at the front we had Hamilton pit in the right pits this time, as I say in my notes. He pitted in the right pits with Button, Hulkenberg and Raikkonen. And then we had Hulkenberg out ahead of Sutil, but he only outbraked himself, and so Sutil made his way through, and Massa passed Hulkenberg into turn 2 as well, and then Grosjean made it past Hulkenberg in turns 5 and 6. So it's a poor few first corners for Hulkenberg in this stint. But it was Hamilton he was going fast, and the top 4 were getting all together now, with Button 8 seconds behind and Massa 9 seconds behind Button, with Massa at the 2 Lotuses and Hulkenberg all together, with Perez 5 seconds back in the McLaren. And Hulkenberg complained on that 25 that the key with these guys, he has to push like hell, so that might explain why he had a bit of tyre wear. But by the halfway point, the top 4 were kind of established. 5 was established, 6th to 9th was established, and 10th was established as well. So the top 10 were basically established. But at this point, Vettel said, "Mark is too slow, get him out of the way." And then Rocky was like, "It's only half race yet, only half race yet." So there's the first signs of trouble there, and it just stayed like this for most of that stint. And you had Maldonado getting lapped, you had the back markers getting lapped at this time as well. But Hamilton pitted at the end of lap 13, came out ahead of Massa in 5th, and it wasn't long before Vettel pitted, but he came out behind Hamilton ahead of Rosberg, and Webber pitted as well and came out in 3rd ahead, with Rosberg on that 31 ahead of Vettel, and Rosberg came out behind Hamilton. And so you had Hamilton that jumped Vettel in the stops, but while this was happening, Button was leading the race in the McLaren. Who would have thought that, a McLaren leading the race after the performance in Australia? But yeah, Button was leading, but soon he got passed by Webber on that 35, Webber with DRS, and then really braked today, really locked up his tyres, but he made it through. And Button soon pitted after that for his final stop, but unfortunately he left with 3 wheels on his rag, and his front right there wasn't properly on, so he had to be wheeled back by the mechanics. And this was outside Gutierrez's pit, so he had to delay his pit stop by that Gutierrez, and came in on the next lap with Button out of the way. And so Button rejoined in 16th, and he soon put in fast laps. He was told a bit to push a bit, but yeah, that was his race ruined, unfortunately. And so the top 5 was Webber, from Hamilton, from Vettel, from Rosberg, with Grosjean in 5th. Yeah, I know it was Massa in 5th, sorry about that. But yeah, soon Vettel made it past Hamilton with DRS before turn 1 for 2nd, and Grosjean kind of got bolted in the first corner by a cage, and he did the old hand thing in there. And Hamilton radio was another 2 laps. Then we got on to scrubbed options, so on that 41 he pitted and came out in 4th after a 3-second stop. Further down we had Raikkonen and Hulkenberg fight a bit, and Raikkonen made his way past Hulkenberg in on the outside of turn 1, then the inside for turn 2 for 8th. And this was after a few laps before, when on the exit of turn 4 Hulkenberg kind of moved across a bit of Raikkonen. Raikkonen didn't like that and wanted it being nicked to, but it wasn't nicked to at all. On that 42 Vettel pitted for options along with Rosberg, and Vettel came out in 2nd after a 2.7 stop, and Rosberg came out 4th after a 3.1 second stop. And then Webber pitted on the next lap for options, came out after a 2.5 second stop. So Red Bull doing really well with their pit stops this race, but when he came out he had to defend from Vettel in the first sector, and Vettel's radio was "Careful, Sebastian, careful." Oh, very, very troubling signs then for Red Bull with him. But on that 45, then you got into Rosberg DRS in Hamilton, and Hamilton DRS in Rosberg on the next straight for a few laps, and then eventually that did calm down as well. And as I said, Button doing quite fast laps near the back, but Vettel on that 45 did the fastest lap with a 1:40.446. And then got my notes here now, so I don't have to always look over there, but I might be looking down a bit. So yeah, on the next lap we saw Rosberg and Hamilton do their thing, and we saw at the front Vettel DRS'd Webber down the front straight, and Webber repassed him into turn 2. Great repass there, but Webber had to defend from Vettel into turn 4, and then Vettel did him round the outside. And Sebastian Vettel's radio was "This is steady, Seb, come on." I think that might be referring to the fastest lap on the previous lap, because as we saw after the race in the warm down room, Webber was referring to multi 21 Seb, and then he did this, "What are you drinking?" And then he said, "Yeah, multi 21 Seb." So that might have been a code to say, turn the engine down. 21 might be like a setting on the steering wheel, like 2 might be the engine setting, 1 might be like the oil setting or something. So, or multi 21 just might refer to, they might have a list of plays or list of settings for the drivers, and multi 21 might just be that what their setting is. But yeah, that might just be turn down the engine. That was what Webber was told to do, and Vettel didn't turn down his engine, it seems, as he did the fastest lap the lap before he got past Webber. So that radio might be referring to that fastest lap instead of the pass. But that was played after bars, and we never know with this team radio when it was said. We just know when it was played. So yeah, that might be what it was. And on the next lap, when Webber went past the pits, he had his hand out of the cockpit, a bit annoyed, and saw Adrian Newey about to have a heart attack, it seemed, and Christian Horner looking like the embarrassed parent on the pit wall. So yeah, and on that 47 we had Maldonado. He was making way through the order, but he retired with Kerr's problems, and Massa made a pit stop and came out in 8th from 5th, so he was on new mediums. And so he had Raikkonen right behind Perez for 6th as well, and the Red Bulls are leading the Mercedes by 9 seconds, with Grosjean 13 seconds behind and Perez 10 seconds behind Grosjean, and Hulkenberg was 9th, 17 seconds down, and then we had Gutierrez 20 seconds back in 10th. So good race from Gutierrez, it seemed. But then we had the Toro Rosso, who's right behind Gutierrez, 5 seconds behind him on that 48. But then Raikkonen made his way past Perez round the outside in the last turn and defended into turn 1, and then Massa made his way past Perez round the outside into turn 1. Great move from Massa, and Perez he's dropped by 2.5 seconds in the first 2 sectors before Massa DRS'd Raikkonen down the back straight on that 49, and then Massa did the fastest lap the next lap with a 39.8. And then we have the Mercedes team orders on that 51, where I've got Rosberg's team radio, "I can go so much faster, let me through, but Braun was like, negative, Nico. And then later in that, Braun was like, Nico, lose his pace is what we're asking him to do. He could go a lot faster, so please be in control as well. And on this lap, Ricciardo pitted, and then he retired a few laps later as he pitted with another exhaust problem for Ricciardo. And Verne overtook Gutierrez for 10th then, and Gutierrez pitted the next lap, came out in 13th. Bottas was up to 11th, Button was up to 12th, just 4 seconds off the points on that 52, and Massa was catching Grosjean for 5th. And on the next lap, Massa DRS Grosjean down the back straight for 5th. And then on that 54, more Mercedes team radio with Nico going, tell Lewis to speed up a bit, this is too slow. But Ross Brawn was like, Nico, please drop back, leave a gap. We have to look after the cars, there's a massive gap behind and there's nothing to gain in front. I want to bring these cars home, please. And then Button pulled in, retired with bald front tyres, and you know, it like McCann just thought he wouldn't get a point out of it and wanted to get a free gearbox change, of course, or free gearbox change, of course. So we also had Hülkenberg passing Perez for 8th in turn 4 after Perez passed him, and then Perez pitted for new tyres because his tyres were also going quite bald, and he did the fastest lap on the final lap with a 39.199. And then we had more team radio, lovely team radio from Red Bull, from Vettel's radio with Rocky going, good job Sebastian, good job, not like you wanted it bad enough, still got some explaining to do. And then when Rosberg was congratulated on his 4th from Mercedes, he said at the end, remember this one. And then Webber of course said multi 21 to Seb in the warm down with my pre-podium warm. And on the podium he said Seb took matters into his own hands and will get protection from the team as usual. So he was a bit unhappy what happened there, but the final order was Vettel 4.2 seconds ahead of Webber, with Hamilton 12.1 seconds behind Vettel, with Rosberg right behind Massa 25.6 seconds behind Vettel in 5th, Grosjean 10 seconds behind Massa, Raikkonen 13 seconds behind Grosjean in 7th, Hülkenberg 5 seconds behind him in 8th. Perez was 9th, 20 seconds behind Hülkenberg, and Verne was 15 seconds down on Perez in 10th. Bottas finished just 1.5 seconds behind Verne for maybe his first championship point, but he finished in 11th. And Gutierrez was first of the lap runners in 12th. Bianchi was 13th, 50 seconds behind Gutierrez, so 10 seconds better than the last time behind Bottas in Australia, so you know, watch out for Marussia maybe. Perez in 14th, Van der Garde in 15th, all a lap down, and Chilton the only guy 2 laps down in 16th. Button was classified 17th, 3 laps down at Ricciardo. Last of the classified finished 5 laps down in 18th, with Maldonado, Sutil, De Resta and Alonso all retired. And that wasn't a very short race recap, was it? But next up, the winners and losers from this race. So the winners and losers of this weekend, well, the loser, well, it has to be F1 actually. The team order thing hasn't really helped the image of F1, or the image that, you know, F1 is Premier Motorsports, we watch it for entertainment. Oh, what are the teams doing protecting their interests? How dare they? At the front. And then some rebel guy who's the 3-time champion tries to spoil it all by overtaking his teammate, and then that Red Bull team, they just look a bit embarrassed by it all actually. And you had 2 different teams with 2 different types of team orders. You had Red Bull with slow down, just keep it in order, and you had Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton fuel saving, and Nico was told to stay behind and just save the engines for the rest of the season. Of course, they have, you know, great restrictions on the engines, of course, with only 8 available this year, and so, you know, Ross Brawn was looking ahead basically and not looking at this race, and just being thankful for this race result. And you saw how Ross Brawn handled it. You know, he has a bit of a history giving team orders at Ferrari and at Brawn, of course, and he just, you know, laid down the law to Nico. It really explained the situation well on the team radio we heard. We didn't hear much from Red Bull after the incident. They might not have actually talked to on the radio after the incident, but we didn't really hear what they had to say on the team radio strategy in the last 10 or so laps, but we heard what Mercedes said, and you heard what Ross Brawn said to Nico, like, this is a long season, and this is, you know, a great result for us. Don't just jeopardise that basically by having a mad rush at Red Bulls who are a bit angry at each other basically. So yeah, that was good. That was good team orders from Ross Brawn. And then you saw Red Bull do it, and it was a bit of a mess, frankly. It was a bit of weak leadership from the pit wall. It was a driver a bit out of control, out of their control, and they're basically a bit of a repeat of, say, Brazil 2012 last year. You know, Webber was a bit out of control, not backing up at Vettel for the championship, and kind of went on his own. And then that's an easy point to forget that Webber hasn't really followed team orders in the past. Of course, Silverstone 2011, you know, he's told to maintain the gap, and he kind of attacked Vettel a bit, even though it didn't actually work in the end. So yeah, remember that, you know, that Webber, he hasn't always been a saint either. And yeah, I'll explain a bit on team orders in my Formula 1 show video this week, but yeah, that's the main talking point there. And you saw two different teams go very two different ways, and two very different outcomes. But yeah, Mercedes winners of this weekend, really. I don't think we really expected them to be up there. I think we expected maybe a top 5 for Hamilton and maybe Rosberg as well if it was wet. But they showed great race pace, even though Red Bull were kind of all seemed like tyre saving for almost the whole race. They really kept with Red Bull, and it was great to see. And it was very hot out there, and it didn't seem like tyre wear was too much of an issue for them. It was a bit of an issue if they between the second and third starts, you know, the tyres kind of wore a bit for Hamilton, but yeah, it looks like they might finally have found a bit of a way to get over this tyre issue they've had since Prix are coming into the sport. And Red Bull, of course, winners, they got the maximum 43 points, but also losers for this whole team order thing. So yeah, and how they got to handle that situation for the rest of the season, good luck to them. Ferrari, they're kind of losers, I would say. I think Massa he came 5th, but a bit of a distant 5th. He did get caught up in the midfield after a poor start, and of course Alonso and Ferrari took an unnecessary gamble there, basically, by trying to save themselves a pit stop of saving, you know, from wet tyres to dry tyres, or intermediate tyres. And you saw what happened when he got behind the Red Bull, and there was more aero loading on that front ring, which was going to go anyway that lap, I think. I think Ferrari realised that about 5 seconds before Alonso's front ring collapsed and he was in the turn 1 gravel. But yeah, that was an unnecessary risk in my view, and it would have been better just to pit and just go on dry tyres anyway. Take that gamble. Don't take the gamble with the part which was unstable. Take the gamble with the part that was stable, the tyres to the wheels, and see if you could have maybe gained time by changing onto dry tyres. It would have been early maybe, but I think that would have been the gamble to go for instead of gambling on that front wing staying together for the rest of that lap. So yeah, Ferrari, they didn't really win that weekend. Massa is ahead of Alonso in the championship though. Yeah, I don't know what point I was trying to make with that, but yeah, Sauber, they kind of did okay. Hulkenberg, you know, great in the inter phase. Both him and Gutierrez into the top 10, and Gutierrez looked very good in the inter phase as well. And Hulkenberg was into the top 5, but when it got dry, they suffered from tyre wear. It seems like Hulkenberg was just pushing the car a bit too much, bit too hard, you know, for the capability to hang on to the top 5 or rest of those Lotus and Massa group there. And then he just found the clutches of Perez, got past Perez when he had tyre issues, and so yeah, it was a solid 8th place for him. It is worrying that they seem to have some tyre wear issues, but it was an unusual race, and maybe we'll learn more in China, which is a bit renowned for tyre wear issues if it is hot over there. But it's been kind of cool in the past few years, and we've seen Mercedes do well, so maybe it'll stay a bit cool as well. But yeah, that's Sauber, Lotus. It was a bit of a down weekend for them. Raikkonen kind of got stuck in traffic with Hulkenberg, with Perez, with Massa, and then eventually he got through it all, and then Massa overtook him again. But when he pitted late for those alright for those medium tyres. I'm getting my words mixed up again. But yeah, it was a bit of a down weekend for Raikkonen. Of course, he got the penalty in qualifying as well for impeding Rosberg in a 3-place grid penalty. It was a good weekend for Grosjean, kind of. He kind of outperformed Raikkonen in the race, but he did have more clean air, and so you always got to take that into account. But he did perform better, I think, in the race anyway. So yeah, that was Lotus, a bit of a down weekend for them. Force India, that very much the losers. They had great pace, it seemed, in qualifying for Q1 and Q2 and in practice, and then it just fell apart in the race because they chose these new wheel nuts which kind of expanded with the temperature, and they could get the wheels off but they couldn't put these wheel nuts back on. And so yeah, that's a shame for Force India. Maybe you take the gamble when it's Europe, not take the gamble when it's one of the most humid races of the year in Malaysia. They didn't expect that, the wheel nuts to expand a bit and not really fit on again. But yeah, they had trouble with the sleeves or threads with it. So yeah, hopefully that will be sorted out by China. And I think they know that issue and know how to fix it. So yeah, hopefully that will work out for Force India, but encouraging pace from them. Anyway, Williams, yeah, Bottas, very solid weekend again from him. Outdid Maldonado in the race. Maldonado, you got to get your head together, it seems. You're making mistakes in the races again. Getting out on turn 11 on that 14 off the top of my head, or what I said in the race recap. So yeah, another mistake from him, cost him his ring, and then he got stuck behind Bianchi for a few laps, about 10 or 15 laps in the middle of the race. So, and Bianchi was kind of maintaining that gap as well until the last or second to last round of pit stops as well. So that's a bit worrying for Williams, that their pace is kind of equivalent to Marussia at times. So yeah, you got to look out for that. Maybe Marussia, they're very confident they can move up the order. So you got to be Williams is going to kind of be looking over their shoulder, even though they do have to look ahead, of course, and catch up to the other teams such as Toro Rosso. And they finally got a point with Verne. That was a good race from Verne. He struggled in the early parts. He was behind Van der Garde and Bianchi after they changed on the dry tyres, but he worked his way up the order and he got a very good point. So very good race from Verne, just like he did last year. He got 8th in that wet dry race as well. Ricciardo, not a broken exhaust. They really have to look at that, but he shows solid pace, always around the top 10, mostly 11th for almost the whole of his running in that race, it seems. So yeah, good pace from Ricciardo as well, even though Verne was catching up in the end and right behind him. So that could have been another team order controversy there from Toro Rosso. Ricciardo stayed in the race, but unfortunately he had to retire. So yeah, good race from Toro Rosso, and again getting quite a good start, and it'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that into Europe and if those upgrades work and they can still challenge for points. And who else were challenging points? Well, McLaren. I don't know how I missed them out, but yeah, McLaren were in very encouraging pace for them. Perez always in the top 10, got 9th in the end. A bit right that his tyres kind of wore a bit faster in that final step. I think they were trying to make them last a bit though, so yeah, that's why he made that pit stop on the second to last lap. And then got fastest lap on the last lap, of course, with a 39.1. And Button running P5 for most of the race, a solid P5, and then so unfortunate what happened to him with that pit stop, how the right front wasn't secured on, just like in Silverstone 2011 when he left the pit lane and the right front wasn't on. So yeah, that was a bit disappointing for him, but very encouraging pace for McLaren. Maybe that car suits the hotter temperatures. Maybe that would explain a bit of their gain there this weekend. But yeah, they've got lots to work on, but it's very encouraging that their pace seems a lot better than it did in Australia. And we had Force India. So we're going to the back teams now. So Marussia, yeah, another great weekend from Bianchi. Qualified almost a second faster than Chilton in qualifying, and in the race again finished a lap ahead of him, even though I think Chilton had his problems again. But Bianchi, just a great pace from a valuable 13th, even though they think they can do better. They could challenge for points, they reckon. So it's be interesting to see their upgrade going ahead and how they could maybe jump forward and join the midfield, which Caterham have failed to do and themselves have failed to do for the past few years since they have joined. But Caterham, a home race, I don't know, we were expecting a bit better, but Van der Garde was flying on those inters in the early laps, and then he kind of just gradually fell backwards, and Pitt got ahead of him. And Pitt, even though he had his issues as well with especially Verne, when they released Verne into his path, what were Toro also thinking of, but yeah, it was just a solid race from them. They do have to do better though. They did a bit closer to Mauritius this weekend, but it was a strange weekend again. But yeah, Caterham, they just need to improve a bit, and hopefully those European updates will work for them. I think everyone are kind of banking on those European updates who are a bit down to hopefully make them push forward. But yeah, that is the winners and losers. So let's go to the race rewards, the of the race. So of the race, well, who's going to be driver of the race? This is a very interesting question because, well, Vettel, he won, but he kind of disobeyed his team, so that kind of counts him out. Webber, who obeyed his team and just bided his time at the front, he drove a very solid race and had a great start for once, going up the order, so maybe he was in the running there. Lewis Hamilton, of course, getting a podium, even though he was saving fuel for half the race, it seemed, and he's always up there, managed to get second briefly till Vettel DRS'd him. And Rosberg, very solid from him as well. Jenson Button, he's kind of let down by the team and car in the end, but great pace for P5. Hulkenberg as well, being in P5 on the inters and running in the top 10 for the rest of the race, or most of the rest of the race. Perez as well, driving well from the midfield to get some points. Massa, P5 in the end, even though he kind of dropped back from his front row qualifying spot, but as I said, he qualified on the front row for the first time since I think Bahrain 2010, that far back maybe, or 2010. So yeah, that's a long time for him rating, and it is good to see he's up there finally. And of course Bianchi, he's going to be in there. Bottas as well, qualifying well and racing very well again and just outside the points. John-Eric Verne, after being slow at the beginning, working his way through the field to 10th, but I honestly don't know who to give it to really. I think I might give it to Jenson Button because he's running a very solid P5 just by himself basically. I think Massa wasn't really challenging fine with the two Lotuses, but yeah, I think I'll give it to Button this week, with maybe Hamilton being the joint co-owner of that, because Hamilton did perform well, and I guess I have to give it to Rosberg as well. But okay, so we got three drivers off this race. We got Button and the two Mercedes basically, so yeah, well done to them, with Verne very close behind getting a point in Taurus after that slow start, and Bianchi of course outperforming the other being best of the newer teams again by a country mile. So team of the race, I would give it to Mercedes. I think I would give it to Red Bull, but they just handled those team orders dreadfully in my view. But Mercedes, they challenged Red Bull. I think no one really expected that, and they did a great job. Maybe underfueled the car a bit too much, anticipating Redden. Of course, in the rain, you kind of use fuel, but yeah, they just challenged Red Bull, and they made that a very interesting race at the front without them. Red Bull would be miles ahead, and we'd just be talking about how they squabbled a bit and after that. But yeah, it was great from Mercedes, and you saw how Rosberg handled his team orders from the pit wall. He handled them very professionally, and Rosberg was very professional as well. He might be a bit upset now, but he understood what was going on, and he stayed behind Hamilton, even though it's very easy for him to pass him. You've seen every time he had DRS, he had to lift off about 150 minutes to 200 minutes before the corner just to stay behind. But yeah, that was very professional from Mercedes how they handled that, and yeah, they get team of the race. Overtake of the race, well, there were quite a few good ones I think, but one that sticks out was Grosjean past Hulkenberg in turn 5 and 6. It was very good driving from both of them. Hulkenberg could have just stuck it, he stayed with him into that right hander, but he backed off, gave Grosjean even some space, and that was great drive from two former GP2 champions there. So that was great racing to see, and I will give it to Grosjean. You know, we beline him a lot, but he has started the year well. He's got 2 points. Well, I say well, he's got 2 points finishes, and you know, he hasn't got into any major incidents anyway. Even though, you know, he hasn't really got the pace, you know, in Australia, but we understand why he didn't. And you know, he finished ahead of Raikkonen in this race. You know, Raikkonen was stuck in trout, and he was kind of stuck in trout as well. But yeah, it was a good race from Grosjean, and I hope it continues. Hope he continues to perform well. I did predict him to be the best of the second drivers out of the top 5 teams as well. And so yeah, keep performing, Grosjean. Keep performing. So yeah, those are the of the race, and that is this review of the Malaysian Grand Prix. And yeah, I can only apologise again for it being so late. You know, it's on Wednesday. Oh my god, it's 2 or 3 days late. So, but we know that is like 2 or 3 years now in the internet age. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this. I'll be back again next week for the preview of China, and I think I can't remember if IndyCars is on. I think IndyCars is on at Barber Park Motorsport, so that's a brilliant race around there normally. So yeah, I'll be previewing those. I might do that together instead of doing it 2 separate programs. Just helps me save on the editing basically, and helps me save on time as well to do other videos, because I'm quite behind on that on both channels. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this, and I'm up for watching. So till next time, cheerio. Oh, you thought I had enough of me rambling in the main show, but you know, in the post-roll I do like to cover other series, and there was also another series in Malaysia this weekend, or last weekend, and that was the GP2 series, the Premier feeder series to Formula 1. Always runs with the Formula 1 paddock at 14 events this year, and the next one is at Bahrain. And this weekend was the beginning of the season, and we had some pre-season favourites as well. James Collado in the Art Grand Prix car, Fabio Lina in the Racing Engineering car, Marcus Ericsson in the Downs car, the champions of the last 2 years with Grosjean and Valsecchi. We had Stefano Coletti, kind of, even though I don't think we really kind of expected him to perform as he did this weekend, but I think over the season he might not be into a title challenger. But yeah, those are the main 3 there, or 4. So into this weekend, and yeah, as always with GP2, it was entertaining. You got these drivers, you know, going around with the F1 paddock, you know, trying to impress, or hungry drivers who want a chance in F1, trying to impress, basically showing themselves to the F1 paddock, going, look at me. And that can only mean entertaining races, and they were very entertaining this weekend. A bit, well, less entertaining than normal, I would say, but you know, interesting races nevertheless. And in the feature race, we had Stefano Coletti start from pole and get away well from pole. We had Philippe Nazir, who I forgot to talk about in the pre-season favourites, but yeah, in the Carlin car he was very good as well. And James Collado, you know, he solid in behind them. And we had Mitch Evans in the Arden car, you know, GP3 champion last year. He got up into 3rd at the start, brilliant start from him. But you had Coletti, Lima, Evans, Collado, and Nazir as the top 5. And then Collado basically mugged Evans into turn 4, got past him, and Nazir got past him soon after. And at the front, Coletti kind of pitted early, and for his hard tyres, they have 1 pit stop to make, and they have to soften hard tyres. And you can go hard or soft, I believe, so you don't have that 1 tyre compound rule like you do in F1. But yeah, early on you had Coletti pitting a bit early for his hards, and then Lima went on for about 5 laps more and pitted around the same time as Collado as well, and that was the top 3. And behind Evans was staying up there, even though he suffered from tyre wear, it seems. So he's got a bit to learn about these tyres, but yeah, he got some solid points anyway. And you had Sam Bird as well in the Russian time car doing very well as well, and you had John Parber from the back of the grid, you know, racing through again really well. I don't know what it is about Malaysia, but he always seems to just qualify poorly. But this weekend he was probably man of the weekend because of his racing during the race. He just overtook anyone during Palmer in the Carling car. He's a teammate of Nazir, so no, maybe one to watch out for because it was very impressive this weekend. Even though he didn't score many points, sadly, because he kind of stalled on the grid in the sprint race. So started at the back then and kind of overtook most people and went up to ninth in the sprint race. But back to the feature race, and at the front it was basically Coletti and Lima together, and then Collado just kind of worked his way up to the back of them. But in the end, Coletti, his tyres kind of went off a bit early, and so Lima just made his move when Collado was almost in striking distance of Lima, and so yeah, you had Lima in the lead, and Collado soon after made it past Coletti in turns 1 and 2, and yeah, that was the top two, and Lima just controlled the gap afterwards to about just under a second, and so Lima won for Racing Engineer, their first win in over a year, and it's a great win for Lima. You know, I do expect him to challenge this year. It's his 4th season in GP2, so it is that time where you do expect him to challenge. But I did talk about another GP2 pre-season favourite in Marcus Ericsson in the Dams. He qualified in the midfield, and on the first lap into turn 9 he kind of got outjudged. Basically he kind of got put out to dry on the outside, and he went over the back of, I think it was Palmer actually, and yeah, he kind of went whee and into the gravel. But he didn't flip, he just went kind of at a 45-degree angle. But yeah, thankfully he was okay, and there was just a disappointing weekend from Ericsson. He didn't get any points in the sprint race either, went out early, so yeah, that was a disappointing weekend for him. But yeah, very encouraging for Lima in the feature race, and in the sprint race sadly he didn't go for much longer either. And in the sprint race, McElmy started from pole, and you know, he got quite a solid getaway, but it's Coletti from 6th. He just motored past, went into the lead, held it for the rest of the race. It was a brilliant start from him, and he won. And we did expect these tyres to go off a bit because, as I say, he's got a bit of a reputation for being a bit too hard on these tyres, but no, he just kept it together and won the race. So a great weekend for Coletti, and be very interesting to see if he can maintain this, and you know, he can maintain being a title challenger, because he has been in GP2 for quite a while. He started with Durango in 2009, I believe, and he had major incidents at Spa, specifically said major incident 2009, 2010, 2011, but basically every year he's been at Spa, he's had an incident. But yeah, but we haven't really expected this like Italian and Monaco, you know, to really challenge for the title, but maybe this year he will, and it'll be good to see that. And Collado made a Horlicks off the first lap there into turn 4. He kind of just misjudged how far behind he was behind Julian Leal, who's Lima's racing engineer teammate. And I know it was behind Lima. He just misjudged it, and yeah, he kind of went straight into turn 4 and hit the back end of Sam Bird's Russian time machine. Unfortunately, that broke his suspension, it seemed, then of Julian Leal, Lima's teammate. So basically he took out both racing engineering cars and the Russian time car of Sam Bird. But yeah, in the end, in that race, you had Nazir as well up to 2nd, just staying behind Coletti. He never really got past, but yeah, very impressive driving for those two. And Mitch Evans in the Arling car finished 3rd, and that's his, you know, in his rookie weekend basically, he got his maiden podium. That was a brilliant performance from him. Another performance I want to point out as well, Connor Daly in the Heimler car. Yeah, Heimler car. I don't want to say the other, so you would say that, but yeah, he came 7th in that sprint race and got a couple of points, and that's very impressive because he just got the call from the team that you're driving for this weekend in Monday. He's only done one pre-season test as well, and so, or one day in the car, so yeah, that was very impressive from him, and I don't think anybody, including Daly, expect him to drive for this weekend. So yeah, very impressive from the American as well. And there's an interview with Peter Windsor for the Racer's Edge he did for the F1 Racing Show, that is the Racer's Edge, that is hosted by Peter Windsor. He did an interview there, so I'll link that description below if you want to find out a bit more about him. But yeah, that was an interesting weekend for GBT, but I expected to get much better in Bahrain. They normally get a bit feisty in Bahrain and very feisty in the European part of the season. But yeah, that's the post roll done. So yeah, I'm done. Bye.